my husband cheated, then blamed me. So I served divorce papers at his promotion party. From the outside, we looked like the dream couple. He was a rising star at his tech firm, charming, confident, always the one shaking hands and getting praise at company dinners. I was the supportive wife, smiling at events, keeping the house running, making sure his clothes were pressed and dinner was warm. We had the modern marriage everyone envied, or so I thought. But in reality, I was fading into the background of his perfect image. It started small. He'd come home later. His phone lived in his pocket like it was a second spine. He stopped asking me how my day was. At first, I blamed myself. Maybe I wasn't interesting anymore. Maybe I'd become too routine, too available. He never yelled. He never hit. He just drifted, and I was the one standing still. Then one night I found it. He was in the shower, and his phone lit up beside me on the couch. A message popped up on the screen, bold as daylight. "Last night was amazing. I can't believe you had to leave so soon." My heart stopped. My mouth went dry. I clicked it. A whole conversation opened. Weeks of messages, flirting, confessions, plans, and photos. Photos that made my stomach twist. Lingerie. Hotel rooms. My husband telling another woman how beautiful she looked in his bed. When he came out of the shower, I looked him dead in the eyes and said, "How long has it been going on?" He froze. Didn't ask what I meant. Just stared like a man who had already been caught but hoped the world would end before the conversation began. He laughed. A short, pathetic laugh. "Are you serious right now?" I saw the texts. I said quietly. And that's when it happened. He didn't apologize. He didn't deny it. He said, "Maybe if you weren't so emotionally unavailable, I wouldn't have had to look elsewhere." He blamed me. He looked me in the face and told me his cheating was my fault. That night, I packed a bag and left. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just watched him become a stranger. But I wasn't done. Not yet. Because 1 week later, I found out something that gave me a plan. Something that would let me hit back harder than he ever expected. He was about to be promoted. A huge party. A celebration thrown by his company. Guests, executives, speeches. So I made a quiet appointment with a lawyer and scheduled something very special to be delivered at his party. Right as he toasted to his future. Because if he thought I was the weak one, he had no idea who he was actually married to. The party was set for Friday night at an upscale rooftop venue downtown. One of those places with skyline views, catered hors d'oeuvres, and people pretending they weren't judging each other's outfits. My husband, well, ex-husband-to-be, had been bragging about it for weeks on social media. New position, new office. Couldn't have done it without the amazing people in my life. The nerve. And yes, he tagged me in those posts. The same woman he'd blamed for his infidelity. The one he shoved to the side like an accessory he no longer wore, but kept in the drawer, just in case. He didn't know I'd hired a lawyer. He didn't know I had screen recorded every message, every photo, every bit of digital proof, and he definitely didn't know what I had planned for his big moment. While he was sending out evites and practicing his promotion speech in the mirror, I was finalizing every last detail with my attorney. Timing was everything. The documents would be delivered not to his office, but to the party. Served by hand. Right when he had a champagne glass in one hand and the mic in the other. But I didn't stop there. I reached out to a woman I'd once met at one of his company dinners. One of those executive wives who had seen me through tight smiles and polite small talk. I asked her one thing. Has he ever bragged about being the perfect husband at work? Her response? Constantly. They practically worship him around here. People think you two are goals. That sealed it. I wasn't just going to serve him. I was going to shatter the illusion he built, crafted image at a time. On the night of the party, I dressed sharp, black silk dress, red lipstick, heels that clicked like thunder on marble floors. I didn't want to hide. I wanted him to see me, to remember the woman he underestimated. He lit up when he saw me walk in, smiled like I was the prize he still owned. "Didn't think you'd come," he said, leaning in to kiss my cheek. I leaned back. Wouldn't miss it for the world. He didn't even notice the man in the suit standing by the bar, envelope in hand, watching like a hawk. People toasted. Music played. I chatted with his colleagues, most of whom had no idea the bomb about to drop. And then, it was time. He was handed the mic. cleared his throat, started his speech with a smug grin and that charming voice everyone fell for. That's when the server stepped forward, calm, smooth, professional, and interrupted him mid-sentence. "Are you Robert Jennings?" "Yes," he replied, startled. The envelope was placed in his hand, casually, like it was nothing. But I knew what was inside. Divorce papers, with full documentation of his affair. Everything. Signed, sealed, served. His face went white. The room fell into a confused silence. He tried to laugh it off. "Guess I just got promoted twice tonight," he joked weakly, but I was already walking away. And behind me, people began whispering, because he wasn't just being congratulated anymore. He was being exposed. And it was only the beginning. Whispers turned into questions, and questions quickly morphed into stares. The energy in the room shifted like a gust of wind had blown through and knocked the fantasy right off its pedestal. People who'd been raising glasses moments ago now leaned into each other, murmuring under their breath, eyes darting between the envelope in his hand and the frozen smile on his face. He stammered. Just a legal thing. Nothing big. But it was already too late. One of his coworkers, Amy from HR, the one who always looked at me like she suspected something, tilted her head and said, "Is that what I think it is?" And then I heard someone say the words out loud. Did she just serve him divorce papers? The silence turned sharp. His jaw clenched, and for the first time in years, I saw it. That flicker of panic he worked so hard to hide behind charm and charisma. He looked around like he could control the narrative, like if he smiled just right, people would believe whatever came out of his mouth next. But there was nothing left to spin. I didn't stop walking. I didn't turn around. But I felt the weight of 100 eyes shifting from him to me, some in shock, some in admiration, and a few, especially the women, in silent, fierce approval. Because every single person in that room knew what had just happened. The man who bragged about his loyalty, who wore me like a trophy, who cheated and then blamed me for it, had been dismantled, not with violence, not with drama, just with truth, delivered right into his hand. Later that night, I got a message from one of his coworkers, a woman I'd only met once. "I saw what you did. It was brave, and honestly, it was a masterpiece." A masterpiece. He had his moment, sure, a promotion, a party, applause, but I walked out with something better. My power, my voice, my freedom. And unlike his job title, those can't be taken away with an email or a scandal. They're mine, earned, forged in betrayal, unshakable. He wanted a new chapter without consequences. What he got was a public ending, authored by the woman he never thought would fight back. But I did more than fight. I won. The next few days were chaos. For him. His company, where he had spent years crafting the image of the loyal husband and visionary leader, suddenly had questions. HR reached out to me, politely but directly. They'd received anonymous tips linking my husband's affair to someone within the company. Apparently, sleeping with interns while pitching family values in board meetings wasn't great for optics. Who knew? I didn't give them details. I didn't have to. The screenshots, the texts, and the photos had already started circulating among the staff. Not from me, but from people who'd seen the envelope drop at the party and decided to do their own digging. His image? Shattered. And him? He had the audacity to text me. "You've destroyed everything I worked for." I stared at that message and laughed. I destroyed it? I wasn't the one who lied for months. I wasn't the one who broke vows and humiliated the person I vowed to protect. I just let the truth walk in the front door. My mother came over the next day, bringing me homemade soup and a bottle of wine. She'd heard the story. Apparently, someone from the party had posted a vague TikTok about a woman serving her cheating husband divorce papers at his own promotion speech, and it went viral. It didn't name me, but it didn't have to. Everyone in our circle knew exactly who it was. My mom looked at me over the rim of her glass and said, "I'm proud of you. I never thought I'd say that about a divorce, but damn, honey, that was poetry." That night, I finally let myself cry. Not because I missed him, but because I had finally stopped carrying the weight of a lie that never belonged to me. For so long, I'd been walking on eggshells, trying to keep the peace, to stay lovable, to be good enough. But the truth was, I was never the problem. He just wasn't capable of being honest with anyone, including himself. And now I had a blank page. No more checking his phone in secret. No more pretending to be okay. No more wondering if I was the reason he stopped looking at me like I mattered. Because I did matter. I always had. He just never deserved me. And finally, I had stopped letting him convince me otherwise. A few weeks after the party, I walked into the same coffee shop where we used to spend Sunday mornings together. I hadn't been back since the split, but something in me wanted to reclaim it. Take back the spaces he once filled with pretend affection and shallow promises. The barista recognized me. She gave me that cautious look, the one people give when they know your personal life exploded all over social media. "You look different," she said kindly. "I feel different," I replied. As I waited for my latte, I scrolled through my phone. The posts had died down. The gossip faded. People had moved on. But I hadn't. Not in a bitter way, just in the way someone does when they realize they've been reborn. I no longer saw my reflection as the wife who was cheated on. I saw someone who stood up, refused to be erased, and handed the consequences back to the liar who earned them. My lawyer had called me the day before. The divorce was nearly finalized. And the best part? The prenup, which he insisted on when we got married to protect both of us, was going to work beautifully against him. Because hidden inside it were terms about fidelity. And guess what? He broke them, which meant I wasn't just walking away clean. I was walking away with everything I deserved. The house, the savings, even the car that he used to drive to her apartment. Now mine. His new girlfriend, well, she wasn't so new anymore. Apparently, she wasn't thrilled about the promotion party disaster. Someone told me she'd gone quiet online, deleted some posts, made her account private. I wasn't surprised. Nobody wants to play trophy wife when the shine wears off and reality sets in. And him? He'd been demoted. Not fired, his company was too careful for that, but reassigned, stripped of public-facing duties, moved to some quiet department with fewer eyes. His name didn't carry weight anymore. It carried whispers, judgments, and silence. But I wasn't celebrating his fall. I was celebrating my rise. I walked out of that coffee shop with my latte in hand and a peace I hadn't felt in years. Not the fake kind that comes from pretending everything's fine, but the real kind. The kind that comes when you finally know your worth and no one's lies are heavy enough to bury it anymore. He threw away a good woman. He blamed her for his mess. And she built a life without him. Stronger, freer, and louder than his lies could ever silence. Because in the end, I wasn't just his ex-wife. I was the woman who ended his story and started her own. It was the first Saturday I'd spent alone in a long time, and for once, I didn't dread it. I wasn't waiting on anyone to text me, wasn't tracking anyone's location, wasn't watching a clock for someone who'd never show up when they said they would. I just lived. I played music. I cooked something I actually wanted to eat. I took up space in a home that finally felt like mine. Around noon, I got a knock on the door. I wasn't expecting anyone, so I peeked through the window, and there he was, my ex, standing there in a wrinkled hoodie, holding a small box and wearing the most pathetic excuse for a smile I'd ever seen. I opened the door halfway. He looked me up and down like he didn't recognize me. "You look good," he said, like it was a compliment I should thank him for. "What do you want?" I asked flatly. He held out the box. I thought maybe we could talk. There are some things I didn't get to say. I didn't take it. I didn't even look at it. Everything that needed to be said was already printed in black and white. You signed the papers. "I didn't expect you to actually go through with it," he muttered. And there it was. The real reason he showed up. Not love. Not guilt. Just shock that the woman he used to step on had finally stepped away. He started to ramble. How he'd made mistakes. How his life was falling apart. How the other woman wasn't who he thought she was. That things had gotten complicated. That he still cared about me. I looked at him like he was a stranger. "You don't get to care now," I said. "You cared when you cheated. You cared when you blamed me. You cared when you stood there with champagne in one hand and lies in the other. But now that your world's burning, you remember I existed?" He looked stunned, like I'd slapped him with the truth. And in a way, I had. I stepped back and shut the door without another word. No screaming, no dramatic send-off, just silence. And God, it was beautiful. Later, I opened the box he left behind. Inside, a photo of us from years ago, folded in half, and a note. I ruined the best thing I ever had. I hope one day you can forgive me." I stared at it for a long time. Then I lit a match, dropped it into the box, and watched it burn in the sink, flames curling around our fake smiles and empty promises, because I didn't need to forgive him. I needed to free myself from him, and that's exactly what I did. The weeks turned into months, and life began to breathe again. It was like color had slowly returned to a world I didn't even realize had gone gray. I started sleeping through the night. I went on morning walks with no destination, no pressure. I took a pottery class. I painted my bedroom the shade of soft green I'd always wanted, but never did because he said it felt too feminine. I stopped apologizing for existing the way I liked to exist. The messages kept coming, though. Some from mutual friends, some from people I barely knew, but who felt like they had to weigh in. A few were supportive. "You were brave. That party moment, iconic." Others were quiet judgments in disguise. "Do you think you might have been too harsh? Maybe you should have just left without the drama." Funny, isn't it? How people always expect the woman to exit gracefully, even after being publicly betrayed. But here's what they didn't get. This wasn't about revenge. This was about reclaiming the narrative. He had cheated in silence. I ended it in truth. And if that truth made people uncomfortable, good. Let it. One night, I got a message from a woman I'd never met. She told me her husband had been cheating for 3 years. She'd found out after seeing my story go viral. Something in her snapped that day, she said. Something clicked. I realized I didn't have to be quiet anymore. You gave me the courage to speak. That message hit me like a freight train, because for the first time I realized what I had done wasn't just for me. It was for every woman who's ever been gaslit, blamed, or told to move on for the sake of peace. No. Sometimes peace doesn't come from silence. It comes from breaking the table the lie was served on and building a new one with your own hands. I started journaling again. Just little things. Memories, thoughts, rage, relief. And in one of those entries I wrote, "He broke the marriage. I just broke the silence." That was the difference. And honestly, it was the most powerful thing I'd ever done. It was a rainy Thursday when I bumped into someone I hadn't seen in years. Rachel, one of his old coworkers. She was walking out of the grocery store just as I was walking in, umbrella crooked, hair frizzing, bags nearly slipping from her hands. We both froze. "Oh my God," she said, blinking. "You look incredible." I smiled. Divorce suits me, apparently. She laughed, but there was a flicker of something else in her eyes. Guilt, maybe, or hesitation. She leaned in, lowered her voice. "I always thought something was off with him. The way he talked about you, like you were just part of the routine, not a person. I wish I had said something sooner." I didn't ask her why she hadn't. I didn't need to. Women like her knew exactly how expensive the truth could be in corporate spaces where men like him thrived. Speaking up didn't always make you brave. It made you a target. And I was done blaming women for surviving systems built for men like my ex. "I'm saying something now," she added softly. "They're watching him closely." I nodded. They should. The conversation was brief, but it stayed with me. It reminded me how far his reach once went, and how quickly it had started to shrink. Later that night, I went through old boxes I hadn't touched in years. Anniversary cards, framed photos, mementos from trips that now felt like staged scenes from someone else's life. I didn't cry. I didn't feel much at all, actually. I just began tossing them into a black trash bag one by one, like old clothes that no longer fit. I came across a photo of us at his last birthday. I was smiling so wide, leaning into him like I belonged there. But the part that gutted me, the look on his face. He was already gone. I just didn't know it yet. That night, I burned that photo too. Not out of spite, out of release. Because healing isn't always gentle. Sometimes, it's a fire that consumes the past, just enough to make space for something real. Something clean. I fell asleep that night, not thinking about what I lost, but about what I escaped. A life where I was only ever going to be loved halfway. A man who didn't know how to cherish someone who showed up fully. And that kind of escape, that's not grief. That's freedom. It was almost surreal how quiet my life had become. No more forced smiles at corporate events. No more walking on eggshells, wondering which version of him I'd come home to. No more decoding gaslighting wrapped in affection. The silence that used to terrify me had turned into something sacred. I wasn't lonely anymore. I was finally at peace. One morning, I received an email from a woman named Madison. I didn't recognize the name at first, but as I read, my heart started pounding. Hi, I'm really sorry to reach out like this. I think we might have been involved with the same man at the same time. She attached screenshots, familiar ones, the same sweet nothings, the same hotel room selfies, the same lies, recycled like bad scripts in a play he never thought would get caught. But here's the twist. She wasn't the woman from before. She was someone else entirely. Another affair. Another layer of deception. While he was with her, he was still messaging the other woman, and probably others too. It was like looking into a hall of mirrors, every reflection more twisted than the last. I messaged Madison back. We talked, compared timelines, connected the dots. He wasn't just a cheater. He was a serial liar, someone who fed off admiration, attention, power. He didn't care who he hurt, so long as someone was always clapping for him. She thanked me, said she wished she'd found me sooner. And then she said something I'll never forget. He told me you were crazy, that you ruined his life, but now I see you saved yourself. That line echoed in my head all day, because it was true. He spun me as unstable so he could stay unbothered. He painted me as dramatic so no one would believe the wreckage he left behind. And when I broke the silence, he lost control of the narrative. I saved myself. And in doing so, I lit the path for others to escape to. That night, I made a promise to myself. I wasn't going to carry his shame anymore. I wasn't going to flinch at the sound of his name or waste another ounce of energy wondering why he did what he did. People like him don't love. They consume. And I was done being his favorite meal. A year passed. Quietly. Powerfully. I didn't mark the anniversary of the divorce with tears or anger. I marked it with brunch. A mimosa. A table full of girlfriends laughing until our sides ached. We toasted not to the end of a marriage, but to the start of me. My life didn't explode with dramatic change. It unfolded slowly, beautifully. I got promoted at work, not because I needed to prove anything, but because for the first time I wasn't distracted by survival. I was thriving, and then one morning I opened my email and saw a message from his mother. Yes! His mother. We hadn't spoken since the divorce. She'd always been civil to me, but distant, too involved in preserving her son's reputation to ever fully see what was happening. The message was short. I owe you an apology. I defended him for too long. I didn't know the full story. I do now. And I'm sorry for not standing by you when I should have. You didn't deserve what he did. You never did. I sat there, reading those lines over and over. Not because I needed her apology, but because it confirmed what I already knew deep down. The truth always finds its way to the surface. It doesn't matter how many people he tried to fool, how many versions of the story he tried to rewrite. Lies rot from the inside out. And eventually, even the ones who stood by him were starting to smell the decay. I never responded to her message. I didn't need to. Forgiveness doesn't always require conversation. Sometimes, forgiveness is simply letting go of the space someone once took up inside your mind. That evening, I walked past the venue where his promotion party had been held. Same glittering rooftop, same skyline. But everything was different now. Back then, I had walked in broken, angry, ready to burn his perfect world to the ground. And I had. But I didn't leave it in ashes. I built something new. Not out of revenge. Not out of rage. But out of truth, resilience, and finally, self-love. And that woman, the one who walked out of that party in heels and silence, with her dignity in one hand and divorce papers in the other, she's still here. Stronger, louder, unshakably whole. Because sometimes the best revenge is surviving so beautifully, they can't believe they ever tried to break you.